Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West. Let's keep week 94 going with another Word Nerd Wednesday. Now, this series I began by looking more closely at words we've been encountering in our reading of Tuor and is coming to Gondolin on First Stage Fridays. But we really have gotten ahead of ourselves there. We've touched on so many of the words already. So this week, I'm going to go back to Of Maeglin again, what we'd been reading on Silmarillion Saturdays until it just ended, for a few more words to get nerdy with. We'll start with a place that Arathel had to go through to get to where she was going, the evil region of Nan Dungortheb. Now, this is, of course, the valley where Ungoliant's offspring dwelled, and its translation is Valley of Dreadful Death, as opposed to Valley of Not-So-Scary Death, I suppose. I love names like this that sort of repeat the theme. The best example is Gorgoroth. It's literally Valley of Fearful Horror, or Valley of Horrible Dread. But that's another Word Nerd Wednesday. I want to break down Valley of Dreadful Death here, Nan Dungortheb. Nan is vale or valley. We've seen it in a few places, Nan Curanir, the Valley of Saruman, and recently on Word Nerd Wednesday, Nan Tathrin, Willow Vale. And I don't think I'm giving away any TTT state secrets when I say we'll see it again this episode when we talk about Nan Elmoth. So, Nan, Vale, Valley. Okay, that one's easy. Let's get to the hard work. Dungortheb. Well, it's not exactly clear. I just mentioned, coincidentally I am sure, Gorgoroth. Well, Nan Dungortheb could very well contain a variant of Gorath in Gortheb, so it could be horrible, terror, dread, or it could be a variant of Gurth, meaning death, like Gurthang, Iron of Death, and the cry that Tuor offered a couple weeks back, Gurth an Glamhoth, death to the Din Horde, or orcs. But the Dun element really is unclear, so let's take a look at what eldamo.org has to say. They point out that in the earliest versions of the Lost Tales, the name of this place was Gnomish Nan Dumgorthin, meaning Land of the Dark Idols. By the 1920s Lays of Beleriand, it became Nan Dungorthin, with Doom becoming Dun, and by the Silmarillion drafts of the 30s, that same name, Dungorthin, was translated as Vale of Black Horror, with the first element being Dun, black. It became Nan Dungortheb by the revisions of the 50s and 60s in Morgoth's Ring, and was then given the new meaning, Valley of Dreadful Death. Given that, it's likely that the Dun element is connected to the element that meant black in the drafts of the 30s, so maybe Valley of Black Dreadful Death, something along those lines. The small forest where the sun never came, where Eol weaved his own webs of evil, was called Nan Elmoth. Nan, Vale, Valley. Hey, we just covered that. I'm not going to do that again. Elmoth is a compound word with the elements El for star and Moth for dusk. Now, El we see a lot, right? I mean, that's the Sindarin word for star that is primarily poetic, therefore a bit archaic. It's used in names like Elrond, Elros, Elbereth, and even Eleanor. Sidebar. The more usual word for star would just be Gil, like in Gil-galad or Gilrine. Now, the moth element meaning dusk isn't something we see anywhere else, except in a rejected name of this forest when it was called Gilammoth, found in The Lay of Lathian Recommenced. So, Vale of Starry Dusk. Sounds nice. And frankly, it's too good a name for its current occupant, which brings us to Eol. Unfortunately, no meaning. It's completely unknown. In The War of the Jewels, from a note that Tolkien wrote in the 1950s, he explained that Eol is another name from primitive Fall of Gondolin, meaningless then and now, but it was not intended to have any meaning in Quenya or Sindarin. Oh, I can think of a meaning, and it's got a little bit of an aesthetic sense if you're thinking in vernacular vulgar English. But before we lose our family-friendly rating, let's move on to the name of the metal that Eol was skilled at working. The metal as hard as the steel of the dwarves, and yet malleable enough for him to be able to make it thin and flexible while still protecting against piercing injuries. We read in the text that he named it Galvorn, for it was black and shining like jet. And that fits. Might not have been a very good guy, but he certainly knew his language. The root Gal means light, shine, be bright. Think Galadriel, glittering garland. Gil-galad, star of radiance. And Vorn is the lenited form of morn, which is black, dark, night. It's what we usually see as just more, Mordor, Moria, Mormogil. So shining black works perfectly for this material. Interestingly, in the drafts of the 1950s, Tolkien originally named this metal Rhodeol, which meant metal of Eol. Then in the War of the Jewels, we read that the name of the metal was changed many times. First, Rhodeol was altered to Glindur, then to Targlin and Morlin, then apparently back to Glindur, and finally to Maeglin. Christopher explains, the idea that the name of Eol's son was derived from that of the metal is found in the Revised Annal for 320 in Grey Annals A, where Tolkien writes, Eol named him Glindur, for that was the name of the metal of Eol. Subsequently, Glindur was changed to Maeglin both as the name of the metal and as the name of the son. Now, Tolkien later changed his mind. As Christopher explains, there's a note that says the metal must not have the same name as Maeglin, and that's when he changed the name of the metal to Galvorn. Speaking of Eol's son, let's take a look at his two names. The first one, given to him by Arathel, is translated for us in the text. She gave him a name in the forbidden tongue of the Noldor, Lomion. That signifies child of the twilight. The forbidden tongue of the Noldor, that is, of course, Quenya. The elements in Lomion are exactly what the text says. Lome is the Quenya word for night, dimness, twilight, dusk. Think about the longer name of Fangorn Forest that Treebeard uses, Taura Morna Lome, forest of black night, or Hisilome, literally mist and dusk, or the response of the people after Fingon's great cry. After he'd heard the trumpet of Turgon at the Nirnaeth, they respond back to him, Auta Ilome, the night is passing. So that's Lome. The eon suffix is simply the masculine patronymic, so the name is more literally translated son of twilight. The meaning of the name Maeglin is also given to us in the text, sharp glance. It's a Sindarin name, obviously, Eol not being a fan of the Noldor, and uses the elements Maeg, meaning sharp, and Glin, for gleam or glint. Now, we don't really see either of those elements elsewhere, but they are clearly glossed as meaning these in the appendix for the Silmarillion and in the War of the Jewels. As we saw when we looked at Galvorn, Tolkien once considered Glindur as the name for this character. That would have meant dark glance. And folks, that's it for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. Come back next week as we wander the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, just let me know by emailing barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a lot more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday as we continue our look at artifacts of the Third Age. Podcast listeners, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your app. For those on YouTube, subscribe to this channel to get all of the PPP productions. And be sure you're following @PrancingPonyPod on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.